All right, all right, all right. So I believe we ended about here last time, right? Like a population, like we talked about fitness, fitness function. Before that, we were talking about like the phenotype and genotype space, right? And then a population is a collection of chromosomes. And remember, we like to think of like a population evolving. Obviously, the individuals are what's changing, but overall, the population is moving through the search space. Uh, Typically, your population is a fixed size, which is like the limited resource, but you have other mechanisms that you can like add constraints to provide like a limited number of resources to add like that like selection pressure. And over time, and it doesn't need to be a fixed length, right? A size. It doesn't have to be, but from everything I've seen and done, like I've always made it a fixed size. It's like the simplest way to do it. And over time, we want to see like the population's fitness improve. And diversity is a measure of how different, whatever that means, like differentness among the candidate solutions within the population. And it's, yeah, often helpful to think that it evolves over time. And then selection is the mechanism of how candidate solutions are allowed to persist, okay? Like how, like they will be selected for like reproduction, let's say, right? But that's not really not really true, right? Maybe it comes down to like annoying semantics or nuanced implementation details. But in the example GA I showed you, is we went through and selected all the chromosomes that make it to the next generation, so they got to persist, but some number of them were also varied. They were mutated and crossover took place, right? So some may have been like copied over and stayed unchanged. Some may have been copied and changed in some way. But that's what the selection is doing. Like who gets to continue to exist, whether unchanged or changed. And remember that when they are changed, the information inside, like that DNA, chunks of it will persist still, right? Because like through crossover or mutation. Selection is stochastic but probabilistic. We want to be more likely to maybe pick like the relatively fit candidate solutions. We don't want to just randomly pick. I mean, we could, but that's not really going to have any good selection pressure. And we don't want to crank up the selection pressure too high by always picking like the best ones, because that'll kill the diversity and you'll stagnate and you'll converge too quickly. So we just want to have it such that more fit candidate solutions are more likely to be picked. And there are many ways to go about doing it. And there are two like broad categories. And of them, like roulette wheel is one where it's like proportional based, they call it. And tournament, I can't quite remember the word they use for tournament, but tournament is a great strategy as well. Tournament is what we did, right? Pick two, take the one that's better. Or pick four, take the best one, right? That's what it is. Where proportional, it's this interesting idea where basically you say, I mean, the simplest way to describe it is imagine like a roulette wheel. And if you have a population of like 10 candidate solutions, each candidate solution will be likely to be picked based on their fitness. It's all proportional to their fitness. Long story short, like if you had one candidate solution that was like a 10, 1, 1, 1, 2, 5, and then 13 or something, right? And you would like spin a wheel, right? Roulette wheel. You're more likely to land on like each one of these is like this would be like pick candidate solution A that has a fitness of 13. Candidate solution B has 10 and then C1, D1 and so on. So which one gets picked? Spin the roulette wheel and then wherever it lands, like it could land on any of them, but it's more likely to land up here, right? So roulette wheel and tournament are two remarkably popular selection strategies. I like tournament myself because I find it even easier to implement. Although this isn't going to kill you, but well, I did write roulette wheel. It's in the code for you. And roulette wheel, like one thing that's nice about roulette wheel is it is what it is, right? There's no like additional parameters. Where with tournament selection, you have like that K, how many people are in the pool before you select. And that's something that you can tune, which on one hand is nice, but on the other hand is we already have a lot of tunable parameters. So I don't know, right? Yeah, we go into more detail once we get to like the actual selection topic. There are two popular strategies for like that loop part. There's generational versus steady state. Generational is what we saw, where basically you select, it's very discrete, where like, okay, that's the population. Select to like fill up a new population, apply the variation, repeat. Where steady state is pick two, maybe they cross over, maybe they mutate, and put them back. That's the idea. And then you just repeat that. So that's the steady state one. Where the generational is that you do it at levels of the generation, where steady state will take place at the level of like mating events or something. Something that's interesting with steady state though is you need like another selection strategy. It might not be immediately obvious, but you need another selection strategy of like, well, assuming you have a fixed size population, if I pick two, right? Do I want to just modify the two I picked, or do I want to make copies of them and modify them and put them back? If I want to do that, well, I need to make room for them. So who gets picked to be removed? So you need another selection for like, who do you kick out, which is interesting. Yeah. Steady state does not have discrete generations. Instead, these operate continuously on the same single population. They select candidate solutions for reproduction and selects candidates for replacement, like I was just saying. The offspring will replace the candidate solution select for replacement. So let's say I picked like B and E, and then I copied them, I modified them into like X and Y, but who gets killed? C and I, or killed off or whatever, right? That's like the idea. Any questions so far, or is everyone happy? This is all still fairly high level, right? So, I mean, the whole course is fairly high level. You just kind of play around and figure out what you like. The variation operators, typically you've got your mutation and crossover. Mutation will act on 1, crossover will act on 2. This question always comes up. Could you have one where it acts on 3? Sure, why not? You can do whatever you want, right? I mean, typically this is what you're going to see, but you can do whatever you want. So yeah, the variation operators are used to add like differentness, right? But based on something that was hopefully good. And depending on the representation, some variation operators may be more helpful than others. And like we're going to see some pretty straightforward examples. Like we saw 1-point crossover, right? Where we did the bit string thing. But if you did 1-point crossover on TSP, you're going to have a bit of a problem. Because if you've got, more on that later. Mutation acts on a single chromosome. Ideally, you want it to have small changes, but again, you do whatever you want. Whatever works for what you need, there you go. This would be like a starting place. It's going to be like a random change, and it's going to happen like where it happens, when and where it happens will be random. So maybe it gets, like whether or not a candidate solution gets selected for mutation is probabilistic. And what gets changed in it is usually probabilistic as well. And it's typically destructive, but again, there's so much like nuance to be like, it's hard to like have these general statements. The idea of like how destructive something is will come up later. Basically, like 1-point crossover, I'll give you an idea now. I'm pretty sure I go into it in more detail later, but to give you an idea about like how destructive an operator is. Like if I did 1-point crossover, right, where maybe I select this point and I switched them, the destructiveness, which is not like this like quantifiable thing, it's more of like this idea, you'd be like, well, okay, maybe like adjacency in this thing is like important. Like this part is left unchanged in its order. This part is left unchanged, but like that part, like there was obviously a change, like something happened, it was destructive, but like there was like one point of like destruction, everything else like remained the same, right? But if you had 2-point crossover, 3-point crossover, 4-point crossover, you can go to something called like uniform crossover, which is kind of like endpoint crossover. Suddenly, we're like, if I had like 2-point, 3-point, 4-point, where I started flipping and flopping, you can start to see like, okay, we're starting to like really like hack up what it was. And that may or may not have really bad consequences for what you're doing. Or maybe it really doesn't matter depending on the problem or your encoding. It all depends. There's no one size fits all for any of this stuff. So your idea of crossover would be something like this, right? There's our genotype, maybe that 5 gets flipped to a 9. And it would have some consequence on the phenotype. Here I'm just representing that as color. So the little blue guy's arms are now orange. Crossover is this, information from the same parents, or from the parents, will get transferred between the two. So again, let's say these two got selected, and that chunk, and their genotypes got flipped, and it would have some consequence on their phenotypes. It gets some traits from the orange parent and the blue parent, right? Yeah. Initializing a population is often like random. Often. You can seed it however you want though. You could say like, well look, I know that like maybe I used an approximation algorithm that can give me like a pretty good TSP solution, but then I'm going to take that and put it into the population and then see if the genetic algorithm can improve what the approximation algorithm did, right? You could absolutely do something like that. Maybe you handcraft some solutions beforehand, but we're often careful about doing that because, I mean, if you see the population with something that's really good, you're going to really probably start this search in a local optimum, which might be hard to get out of, and you start to bias the search a lot, which maybe you want to, maybe you don't. It really kind of depends. Like if you think back to that like antenna example I showed you, imagine if they seeded the population with like normal looking antennas, maybe it would never have come up with that crazy looking one that was better than anything designed by a human. Because like our biases might actually really hurt the algorithm's ability to search the search space. And then termination, when do you want to end? After some number of generations. I often do that, I think it's simple. Sometimes people won't do a number of generations, they'll do mating events where basically like you count some number of like changes. It's the same idea though. Some predefined, you set some limit. Maybe after some fitness level is achieved. You say, I want to do TSP. Once I've got a pathway that's less than like 500, I'm happy. Fine, great, do what you want to do. Maybe if some diversity threshold is met within your population. Now, diversity is often not easy to quantify. Sometimes you might be able to, sometimes you might not be able to very easily or intuitively. So that one might be hard to do, but absolutely it could be. Maybe if fitness hasn't improved in so long of a time. The idea there, that's actually a pretty good one. Like imagine you're doing something like this and your algorithm's like learning a lot and then it really starts to stagnate. Maybe if you're like, well, if the fitness hasn't improved in some number of generations or improved by some significant amount in some number of generations, just stop. Because you never know. Sometimes too, it depends on like your initial starting conditions, right? Maybe the next time you hit run, it's like this, right? You never really know. Like crazy things happen. I remember reading this blog post by kind of like a semi-famous person. Let's see if I can find it. I always think back to this person and I can never find them. You are not running GA's long enough blog Evo comp. I'm throwing it out there. No, I'll have to find the guy. He was like a famous like data sciencey blogger from like 10 years ago. I remember reading him and he had this like long essay about like the end of the day, you don't know what's happening. I mean, it was a pretty convincing argument. I don't remember it though, so maybe it was convincing at the time and today I'd be like, that's stupid. But I remember it was interesting how like their argument was like, at the end of the day, you don't know what's gonna happen in the next generation, which is entirely true. And then they talked about ways to actually increase the likelihood of it going up. I really need to go find it. I feel like I found him again after years and now I've lost him again, so. whatever. It is what it is. All right, any questions about any of those things? All right, so raise your hand if you've at least started looking at the assignment. Maybe you haven't done anything on it, but you've looked at it. Okay, good. I would recommend like having a look at it, reading it, make sure you understand what you're doing, but you're going to be doing TSP, which is a fancy way of saying find the shortest Hamiltonian cycle in some weighted graph. There are variations of TSP out there, absolutely, where you could be like maybe it's a directional graph, or maybe it has different weights, but depending on the direction you're going. There's a lot of different variations, and in fact, there's like a generalization, I think. I can't remember what it is. What did I say? CSCI 1, nope. 340, nope. Multi-objective. Vehicle routing problem. Which is an interesting one. Expect to be non-trivial. Yeah. I do, if like you're having fun with the GA stuff and like you get a lot of stuff done, do try the vehicle routing thing. It's like a arguably more interesting version of the problem, where you might have these pathways where you want to minimize the total distance traveled, but you also have multiple vehicles, but you also want to minimize the number of vehicles while also trying to, so it becomes really, it's like an interesting thing where there's two things to be optimized. And sometimes these values can be like in conflict with one another. Like, well, yeah, we can minimize the total, the average distance each vehicle is going to drive if we have n cities, or n places we need to deliver to. Let's use n vehicles, obviously, right? That'll reduce the total average distance each vehicle has to drive, but at the same time, we're using too many vehicles. So how do you kind of balance these things? And then you have these multi-objective problems where you might have these objectives that are in direct conflict with one another, which is interesting. And so this is like a variation that I suggest you do. It's a little more challenging. You'll have to spend some time thinking about it, but you absolutely are all capable of doing it. But okay, here's an example Hamiltonian cycle for this set of cities. All right, for the graph. Is it the best one? Maybe, I don't know. Do I say? No. Usually you assume that these, you don't have to, but like in the most basic version of the problem, usually you assume that you can get from any city to any other city. So it's a completely connected graph. You could go from here to there if you wanted, right? You could have versions where that's not true. I give you, I'm really nice to you. In assignment 1, I give you like these JSON formatted instances, and I went through and like created them for you. By the way, you're welcome. You have no idea how nice it is that I did that for you. So like you better appreciate it, okay? Because in the past, I would always be like, go get the instances, right? And students would go do it, and they'd always moan and groan about like, oh, I got the instances. I'm like, fine, I'll prep them for you. People still complain. I'm like, give me a break. So you better like the fact that I gave you these nice JSON formatted TSP instances. And do I give you like a matrix? Is that what it is? Like, how is the data encoded? Is it in matrices? Oh man.
I think each point is a number, and then you have.
Here, I explain it. Give me, yeah, okay. It's just coordinates. So you would have to calculate the distances. Okay, cool. There you go, right? They have, okay, the instances were originally obtained from TSPlib. Terrible inconsistent format. I just put it into JSON because it's nice. Again, you're welcome. You better like it. And if you don't really know JSON or anything, just do this and you're going to be really happy. It's just, it loads it into a dictionary for you. It's so nice. Anyways, so the idea is it's just coordinates, and in principle you can go from anywhere to anywhere, and the edge weight between any two cities would be its Euclidean distance between those points. If you don't remember how to calculate Euclidean distance, go back to like grade 8. You can do it, right? And by the way, have you ever noticed that like, wait, Euclidean distance between 2 points, right? It's like the square root of like x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared, right? Okay, there. You don't have to go back to grade 8. I just showed it to you. All right, great. If you've ever looked at that and you honestly never connected it to the fact that this looks a hell of a lot like c squared equals a squared plus b squared, you really should have noticed that. Or, okay, fine, c equals the square root of a squared plus b squared. Why? Let me show you. It's just a triangle. That's it. It's a triangle. But that's an A. Well, you get A from the difference between the x's, right? And the y from the difference between the y. It doesn't matter where these are in space. I want to know the difference between them. That's A and B. And Euclidean distance is the straight line between them. It's just a triangle. That's it. So if you never noticed that before, now you have no excuse. It's just a triangle. So anyways, there you go. Euclidean distance, you can calculate it. So how do we want to encode our paths? We know what the problem is. We know what a solution is. It's a Hamiltonian path. So how do I encode that in a computer? We have to make a decision. We've got options. We can do whatever we want. I'm probably not going to try to do like some 2D thing. That sounds really hard. So what can we do? Well, the phenotype is a Hamiltonian cycle. So for the genotype, an ordered collection of cities could represent the path. Or more simply, by assigning each city some integer, 0 through n minus 1, because I like zeros, it could be an ordered collection of the integers between 0 and n minus 1, right? So imagine we have, like this is city 0, city 1, city 2, city 3. Like you could just put that order and it would mean like, okay, there you go. And then like if there's n minus 1 cities, well actually I think we get there. I think we get there, right? Maybe I don't. I'll just make the point. Like if we start at city 0 and end at city like n minus 1, you would want to calculate the total distance for that the Hamiltonian path would be the distance between city 0 and the next one, plus the next one, plus the next one, plus the next one, all the way to the end. But we don't want the Hamiltonian path, we want the cycle, which means don't forget to calculate the distance between the last one and back to the first one. It really matters in terms of finding the best solution. Because maybe you've got a really great solution that gets you all the way to the end, and then you've got a long-ass way to go where maybe you could have had like this like cycle thing that would have been a little nicer. Anyways, don't forget about adding the distance from the last one back to the first one, or the 0th one, because you start and end in the same city. All right, so let's think about the encoding here. So if we wanted an ordered list of cities, we could think about, okay, what's the search space? All right. Well, this would make the search space every possible combinations of integers between 0 and n minus 1. So to iterate through all of them, we could go like 0, 0, 0 to the 0, 0, 0, 0 to 1, 2, like all the way to n minus 1, n minus 1, right? There's a lot, okay? Now that would mean there's a total number of n to the n possible solutions. Your search space would be n to the n. Do you think that's a good one or a bad one? That's like the worst there is. Okay? That's crazy. Like what's 100 to 100? 100's not even a big number for n, and we're already at times 10 to the 200. Like, come on, it ain't gonna work. Now, if you're like, wait, why is it n to the n? Just slow down. You can figure this one out. If we have, let me make sure we understand the math here, because it's important, because then this allows you to reason about these things a little bit on your own. If we have like 0, 0, 0, okay, 0, 0, 0, no, I'm going to generalize. We have like x1, 0, x1, x2, x, n minus 1, right? How many unique values can this take on? 0 through n minus 1, right? So there's n total things here. We have n choices for that. And we also have n choices n times. So it's n times n times n times n. It's n multiplied with itself like n, okay, yeah, n to the n. Right? That's why it's so friggin' big. And that ain't good. It's a problem. But you may have already realized this. This clearly includes a lot of inadmissible, for lack of a better term, inadmissible solutions, since one of the requirements of the problem is that each city is visited once and only once, except for the starting city. All right? So what I mean is, the solution that says start at 0 and go to 0 and go to 0 and go to 0 and go to 0 is obviously no good, because I'm not including any of the other cities. So we could, if we had a way, we could eliminate that from the search space to make it smaller. So the question is, how many of these can we eliminate to make the search space smaller? Is the idea clear? Like if I have an instance that says go to all of these and find the shortest path, and we need 1, 2, 3, 4, and I say, okay, go from here to here, to here, to here, to here, you're going to say, well, but you didn't go to the other cities. And I go, you're right. That's a dumb idea. Let's not consider it as a path. There's going to be a lot of those, because we have ones that might go like from here to here to here to here. That's also no good. So how do we eliminate that? Well, immediately you might say, okay, well, we only want one of each number in the list. I only want, like, if there's a 1 here, there better not be a 1 anywhere else. I only want 1, 1. I only want 1, 2. I only want 1, 3, and so on and so on and so on. So, so yeah, except for the starting city, each one needs to be visited once and only once. So we can take advantage of this. So instead, what we can do is we could say, actually, the subset of n to the n that we actually care about, that are admissible, is going to be a permutation of the numbers 0 through n minus 1. Okay? It's a permutation of those values. For those of you that don't remember, a permutation is basically if I took the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to n minus 1, and I shuffled them. I just shuffled the deck, right? I'm not adding any additional numbers or removing any number. I'm just shuffling where they exist in that line. Okay? So that's, right? So there we go. But, okay, so how big is that search space? Well, think about it. If I have n possibilities here, okay, and I pick one, right? I say go to city whatever, right? So I say, let's say I say, okay, 0. Now, for the rest of these, 0 can't exist in there, right? So how many possibilities do I have now? N minus 1. The numbers 1 through n minus 1, I suppose, right? So I have n options for this one. Maybe if I draw it, it might be better. I'm seeing a lot of blank faces, and when I see blank faces, it's hard to tell if you get it or you don't. I am right here. Okay, I decided to start here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But I'm already here. How many options do I have? I have 5. So I had a choice of one of n originally. Then I had, or I guess 6, really, that should be a 6. I had 6 options. I pick one. Now how many choices do I have? Well, I could go here, 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 or here. 5. Let's say I decide to go to here. So I've already been here, I've already been here. How many options do I have left? 4. I decide to go here. How many options do I have left? 3. So it's 6. Well, and you know, if you want to know the total number, you just multiply these things out. So it's like 6 times 5 times 3 times 2 times 1. Does anyone recognize that pattern? Factorial, right? It's n factorial, actually. Now, you may be aware that n factorial sucks. That's still a big friggin' number, but it's not as big as n to the n. Let's see, like n, let's do 100 to the 100 minus 100 factorial. Well, that doesn't seem right. Because wasn't it? Maybe it's just, maybe? Because like, what is 100? Okay, I see. It's just because, okay. Here's why. Really what I should do is, I'll show you, okay. Okay, it's a really big number still, right? So we've eliminated a lot, but the problem is like the 200 still dominates, right? So it's almost inconsequential. But the point is we eliminated that. Now we have this many, and a TV show. So we have this many. Apparently it's not too bad. Look at that. I've never seen it myself. Has anyone watched it? Yeah. Is it any good?
First 3 or so seasons.
Yeah?
It's all right.
Not all the seasons.
Yeah.
After a while, it gets boring.
Yeah, well, I mean, 7.5 is not too bad, right? Anyways, the point being is, okay, we've eliminated a lot of bad solutions. It ain't good. The search space ain't good, but it's better. We cut off a lot of the useless ones. That's good. All right, so it's n factorial. Okay, so it's still a very large number, but it is an improvement. But however, this representation can be whatever, but the point I'm making here is being clever about your representation will have an impact. Now, if you're smart, you might say, well, you know, often like you fix, maybe like you're starting in last city is fixed. So really it's not even like n factorial. If one of the